So my name is Cynthia Loren, for those who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting. I'm the founder and lead strategist at LGC Africa. We are a consulting practice that looks after law firms who are focused on their BD, marketing, and visibility. And my background is that I was a competition lawyer for many, many years in the here in London. And then I moved into business development and have worked at a variety of international law firms. In the last 10 years or so, I've been exclusively focused on the African market. And so my job has been to advise many law firms and others in the legal ecosystem in relation to their own marketing and business development. My job is basically working with fee earners, business development managers, practice managers, brilliant people doing serious work. And in that time, there are certain questions that have come up as patterns. One of them that is particularly in relation to whether African law firms are properly positioned to turn their work into deliberate and visible growth. I think the answer varies. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And one of the challenges that I've certainly discovered is that some of this is around people being able to precisely define their practice. BD managers, practice managers are often being asked questions and are being asked to surface data. Equally, fee earners are also trying to do the same. And so sometimes it can feel a bit like you are stuck in a loop. And so that's why we have built WorkMirror. It's trying to address some of the challenges that I personally have experienced when talking to lawyers and their legal support in terms of their own business development and understanding their practice. So basically, WorkMirror is a tool that we've developed. It is live, and it would be great if you could actually go and have a look at it now whilst I'm talking to you. You'll find it at workmirror.app. So you can open it on your browser or you can open it on your phone or whichever device. I'm going to talk to you about how the product works, and then I'm going to actually get you to test it. So we've developed the product and it is there available, but we want feedback. We want people to use it so that we can see, whether it's useful for you. It's been built with you in mind. As I say, it's been built in response to some of my own experiences working with law firms across Africa. So we really would like you to have a look. So as I say, the address is workmirror.app. Please go and have a look now, and then I'll talk you through how it actually works. It's completely free to use. So use it, share it with other people. And I'll be sharing a feedback form at the end as well so that you can give us feedback on what you found helpful or not, so that we can develop it further. So a quick question before I dive into the demo. If somebody was to ask you right now, whether a client or a managing partner or potential lateral, which sectors are genuinely driving your practice at the moment, or where your best instructions are coming from, or where your work is quietly concentrating, how precise do you think your answer would be? You can answer out loud if you're bold enough. But maybe, if not, then maybe just answer internally. My experience is that, most lawyers answer with instinct, some answer with some data, but everybody would probably value a bit more support in terms of evidential responses to those questions. And that's really what WorkMirror is seeking to address. And it has been built with the African market in mind. So let me just tell you what it does. The idea is that it turns the data that you have from your work items into something that is a bit more precise. So in answer to the question previously, people have an approximate sense of what their practice is or what they're working on, but it's sometimes, like I say, it's quite instinctive. There isn't always the clear data to back that up. You might have an idea of, actually, in the last month, I've worked on this number of matters, but then there isn't necessarily anything, data driven or even visual to be able to mirror that back to you. And that's why we've put this together. In my experience, people know things roughly, but roughly isn't a strategy. Roughly doesn't hold up very well when you're trying to position your practice, or if you're a fee earner, if you're an associate, it doesn't hold up your case when you're trying to make that bid for partnership. So this is some of the things that the tool is intended to do. So WorkMirror takes a small set of your recent work items and it reflects back a pattern to you. So true to its name, it's basically trying to give you a reflection of what you possibly may have a feeling about, but haven't really looked at clearly. Most lawyers, as I say, have some sense of what is going on in their practice. WorkMirror is trying to support you in that. And we do that in three really easy steps. So we take the input from at least 5 and up to possibly 15 anonymized work items. Most people will do somewhere between 6 and 10, and I'll explain the logic around the numbers in a minute. We take the input from those work matters. They are completely anonymized, so you don't need to put client names in or anything sensitive. You don't need to attach a document. The app will then just analyze the pattern in what you've been doing. So the description that you give the platform is the critical piece. We ask you to talk about the origin of the work, the sectors or industries that are represented, the type of work that you're doing, and then it will give you a response. And I will talk through some of the inputs in a minute, but you can basically either put something that is in that is fairly concise, or if you're someone that is, would like more detail in the description, you can do that also. So there are two versions in terms of the descriptions that you put in. One thing I will say is that the more detail, like anything, I'm sure you will find it also with your AI tools, the more detail you put in, the better reflection you will get from our WorkMirror. The other thing to mention is that if you don't want to type out the description, we've now built in the ability for the app to read a screenshot. So, for example, if you wanted to take a screenshot of your calendar, just to show what you've been working on over the last week or the last month or the last quarter, you could take a screenshot and attach a screenshot, and it will also then analyze that pattern. Okay, so just a quick point on confidentiality. As I mentioned at the beginning, I myself have a legal background. I've worked as a competition lawyer before moving into business development. So confidentiality is, at the front of my mind. I work with law firms across Africa and also internationally. And so it is very important to me and the development team working on this that we are being sensitive about the use of data. So when you put in the input, we ask that you don't put in any client names, you don't put any sensitive facts, any information that is identifying. You can use anonymized descriptions. At the back end, we do not store any of the text that you enter. Okay, I will repeat that. We don't store any of the information that you enter. Over time, the plan is that we will aggregate some of the pattern data that is going through the system so that we can then, continue to support the market with perhaps some observations about types of work and that kind of thing. And also it's useful when we are working with our clients and when we're advising them in terms of identifying very broad patterns. But nothing in the system is traceable. So I say that to just assure people that you can use it with complete confidence. It's been built very intentionally with that safeguard in mind. Okay, so for the purposes of the demonstration, we're going to use a fictional lawyer. Her name is Sheon Diop. She's a partner at a mid-sized commercial firm. She is Nairobi based, so she's in Kenya. She's been in practice over 10 years, about 12 years. Her father is Nigerian. Her mother is Senegalese. She's been educated in the US, qualified in the UK, and is now working in Kenya. Her practice is broad. She spans corporate transactions, banking and finance, and a little bit of employment. And she has no dedicated BD support. So Sharon is very reflective of lots of lawyers who I work with. She's not unusual in any sense in terms of the description that I've given. And according to Sharon, she knows her practice very well, or so she thinks. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the slides and I'm going to share the app. So we're going to jump into the app. Okay, can I get another thumbs up? Can you all see the tool? Okay, so when you arrive on the page, this is what you will see. So again, just the safeguards around no client names. So please give us anonymized information. We do not store any data on the app. We are very focused on confidentiality. So, and there's another confidentiality safeguard. So, I'm very typical, very much a typical lawyer in that sense, making sure that you've seen all the caveats. Right. So the input format. As I mentioned, there are two types of inputs that you can put in. You can either put in a fairly concise description of the matter type and the sector and the work origin, or you can put in something a bit more detailed. And so if you click on this button here, if you're not sure how to set out your matter, we've given you a couple of descriptions just to give you an idea of what the app requires in order to generate this reflection. You'll see that it's split between private practice and in-house. So we have built this app to be usable by both sides of the house. This session today is specifically targeted at those in private practice, although I think we have some in-house lawyers on as well. But we will be running a separate session for those that are in the in-house community, just so that they can also get a feel for how the product works and how it might be able to help them. Okay, so the main input is just the matter description. So I'm going to paste in, these are Sharon's matters, which I've just made up, but these reflect the description that I gave earlier of her corporate advisory, banking, and employment work. So you paste in the matters, and then in order to help us generate a reflection that is more useful for you and also gives us some information about the types of people that are using the tool, we ask that you identify whether you are private practice or in-house or other. There is a drop down for you to select your primary jurisdiction. As I mentioned, Shell is based in Kenya, so we will pick Kenya. Underneath is the area I talked about, where if you don't want to use the description in this way, you can actually just upload a screenshot of your calendar as another means of generating a reflection. So it's very simple. You paste in the information or you attach your screenshot. You click generate my reflection, and in a couple of seconds, we should get back some results. So let's just give it a minute or two. Well, it shouldn't even be a minute. Let's see. There we go. So this is what you will get back in terms of your work pattern reflection. It's got the date, and then it's got some snapshots at the top, which I will talk through. It's got what we call a concentration indicator. And then at the bottom, it's got a bit of a detailed write-up, which hopefully should help in terms of, really giving you this insight into what the app has discovered. There's a button at the bottom so that you can download this reflection. So basically, you can walk away with this document, either, so that it's useful to you. You don't have to live on the app, essentially. You can download this as many times as you want. So let me talk through what you're seeing in terms of the reflection. So the first thing is that the primary pattern is corporate advisory, so no surprises there. That was what we already described of Sharon's practice. The work origin, so most of her work is coming from existing clients. The sector gravity, so the focus of most of her work is in the financial services area. And then the concentration score is 52% or 52 out of 100. I'm going to come back to this number because this number is something that people should be focusing on in figuring out what the nature of their work is. So let me talk through the origin of work. So 90% of Sharon's work is coming from existing relationships in some form or another. So you can see 50% is an existing client. And then we've got 20% referral from colleagues, 20% referral from clients, and then only 10%. So sorry, so 80%, is that? No, that's 90%. So 90% is coming from existing clients. Only 10% is cold, inbound, non-existing client related work. So we'll talk about that. What this says to me and what this reflects in the pattern is that Sharon is trusted. Um, the people that know her keep coming back to her, and they're sending other people to her, hence the referral from colleagues, referral from clients. However, it also indicates that she's not being found by anyone who doesn't already know her. And so that's a gap. That's already a gap in terms of her business development and marketing. It's not a crisis, but it's just a pattern that is worth noting. So this would be an area that Sharon might want to consider in terms of work origination. In terms of sector distribution, there shouldn't be any surprises there. 40% financial services, 30% energy, and then other bits, smaller tier work from telcos, manufacturing, and retail. So she's very focused on these two sectors, financial services and energy, and the rest is spread. This sector distribution tends to be the information that a partner, sorry, a fee earner would know. You would tend to know the type of sectors that you are working on already. And then the work type mix. Again, corporate advisory, financing, banking and finance, commercial dispute, and employment. So these two sections are not really telling you anything that you don't know because you've inputted that information. However, it's quite useful to be able to see it measured and ranked in this way. So this is really, this is intended to be useful to you in terms of helping you position yourself, in terms of how you would describe your practice. So let me talk about the concentration indicator. So that at the top, it said it's 52 out of 100. In the middle of the report, you have a bar, which actually then visually shows where it is. And what it's telling us is that it's the concentration of her matters is fairly moderate. So to give you some context, a score that's closer to 100 would mean that your practice is heavily dependent on one sector or on one client source. So we would expect to see, for example, if somebody's working in-house, they're only going to have the one client most of the time. And so that would be very concentrated because it would always be dependent on one client. However, when you are in practice, you would hope that there is greater diversity in terms of the mix of work and the mix of clients. So a score that is closer to 0 would mean that your work is spread broadly, but it means there's no depth. So really, you want to be somewhere in the middle. You don't want to be spread so thin that you're working for any and everyone. But at the same time, you don't want to be concentrated on one. That's if you're in private practice. And that's why we've split out the sessions, because if you're in private practice, you're looking at slightly different things. So being somewhere in the middle is a good result. That shows that there is enough concentration to have genuine expertise and credibility in a sector, but there's also enough diversification to be resilient if a particular sector slows. So when you guys run the tool for your own matters, there's no magic number, but what WorkMirror is trying to do is give you a means of seeing what your practice really is made up of. So just to note that. Underneath, you then will read. So I'm not going to go through this. This is quite good to read once you generate your own reflection. So I will invite you to do that yourselves. But one thing I will call out is just the emerging thread. So in our bid to try and be as useful as possible with this tool, we've given you some headline insight on areas that may signal growth. So for Shell, it's the renewable energy JV that's been signaled as an area that she might want to look at. The tool is basically saying that because of the way the relationship came through in what Sharon described, it's signaling that this might be something that Sharon would like to consider as, an area for growth. So the whole point of this tool is that, it's not supposed to be an end in itself. All it's really doing is helping you identify the pattern in your work. For those of you who, for the response at the beginning was, well, I already know what I do, so I'm fine. This is not very meaningful for me. I guess the question would be, so what? You're being given information that you may already know. I think if you don't have the grasp of this information, it's incredibly useful. If you do have the grasp of the information, the question then becomes, okay, so what do I do with it? And that's where the work that I do as a consultant, as an advisor to law firms and others within the legal ecosystem becomes useful, because our work at LGC is really to help you act on the patterns that you've identified by trying to address some of the gaps. So at the bottom of that reflection, we saw the emerging thread. That might be an area that a law firm or an individual fee earner or a practice administrator would need support with in actually figuring out the how of how to do that. And also in trying to address some of the gaps. So strengthening what's working, whether that's the concentration indicator, is that do you need greater diversification across the portfolio in terms of working for more clients, deepening the relationship with clients. So that's really the work that we do outside of the tool. The tool is the starting point. So that's why the heading of this slide says the pattern is not the destination. What we're trying to do is provide a starting point so that everybody has a bit of an equal footing. But ultimately, it might be that you then need some further assistance in terms of what you do next. And so what we have with WorkMirror is at the moment we have a free version, and I think I might have a slide on this. There we go. We have two versions. So that there's the self-service version, which is what you're seeing at the moment. As I say, it's absolutely free to use, and we would invite you to go ahead, use it. Please share it with those within your firm. If you have some time, please complete the feedback form and share that with me so that I get, I've already had great feedback from a number of people that have been using it from across the continent, which is fantastic to see. I would love to get as many people as possible using it. So please do go ahead and use it, download the reflection card. It might be actually that it's the reflection card is a means of demonstrating if you're an associate and you're trying to prove to, a partner, for example, that this is the validity of the work that you do, that might be a nice visual means of using the card. So I'm sure there'll be multiple uses of this free tool. But in addition to that, we've got what we call the WorkMirror Deep Scan. So if you found value in just this, in this version of it, we actually have the ability to go much deeper and much broader by giving you a comprehensive practice analysis across a whole practice. So that could be across a whole firm, across a whole team. And we will then make much deeper BD and positioning recommendations based on the information. The deep scan is a paid for service, so that's not free. And it takes a little bit longer. So whereas the WorkMirror, the version that you've seen was able to generate a quick reflection in a couple of minutes, this is something that we would then work with you on to deepen your understanding of your practice, but not just to give you the what, to give you the how. So based on our experience working with other firms, we would benchmark what we're seeing, we would make recommendations, and you would get a full report which shows the structured matter analysis across the team or the firm or the group, as well as detailed recommendations and some hand-holding effectively to help you get there. Okay, so having said all of that, I would love for you to try the app. This is not going to be a very long session, so I'm going to stay on and obviously let people, if you want to stay on and try the app whilst I'm on and ask me any questions, please do. It's super simple, as I hope you've seen. All you need is the matters, and actually, if you don't have the matters, you can do the screenshot of your calendar, you select your role and your jurisdiction, you click generate my reflection, and there you have it. You have a free reflection card, which I really hope will be useful to you.